It is 12 o'clock on Sunday, so here we are for Sunday's live stream. And I'm just getting set up here, as always, with the help from my wife, who's setting up the iPad next to me so I can see messages and talk to you guys. There we go. So, yeah, hopefully we'll have some people joining us shortly. I hope you're all safe and well, as always. It's been a really busy week here. I'm sure you're used to that by now. And punctuated right in the middle of the week by butchering of our pig. We butchered a pig on Wednesday, and that takes a whole day. Hi, Jeff and Deb Shipton. I'm so glad you could join us. And yeah, so butchered a pig on Wednesday, and I thought I'd share a little bit of that with you. Hi, Jenny. So glad you could make it. Yeah, I thought I'd share a little bit of my experience from Wednesday with you because it's still something, as you guys know, that I'm incredibly new to. So I have, harvested one of our animals before, one pig before. This was the second time. So the first time was a bit of a baptism of fire. I had some help, and it took basically 3 days to go from slaughter to processed. And the first day was basically, and I'm aware that not everybody wants to know the details about the animal butchering, so I'm going to keep it really simple. But the first day goes from basically the slaughter, and then I broke the animal down into sort of 5 big pieces. The second day was the butchering of those pieces, and then the third day was things like sausage meat making, bacon curing, all those kinds of things, and bagging them up, labeling them, and freezing them. Well, this time I got stages 1 and 2, or what took me 2 days last time, all done in the first day. So that was amazing. By the end of the first day, I basically had all the butchering done, and then it only took me a couple of hours to do all of my curing and stuff. So on a subsequent day. So yeah, really happy with that. We're going to be harvesting another pig in the next couple of days, so that's going to give us way more pork than we need or than we can eat, but it's the position we're put in because we have to get rid of our pigs. So yeah, that's where we are. And it made me think, one of the questions I wanted to ask you guys actually while you're all here is, what animals, and it doesn't have to be towards, to do with meat, but what animals would you keep, or are you working towards? What animals would you keep if you could, if you had the space? What's the next animal on your sort of list of animals to get? And what's on your wish list? I know that for us, we are kind of in a transition at the moment between our pigs, and we're going to be moving to turkeys, I think. And feels like a little bit of a step back because it's kind of a reduction in the array of meat that we'll be harvesting for ourselves. But hi, Shannon. So glad you could make it. Yeah, so like I say, going from pigs to turkeys feels like a bit of a step back for us because we already have chickens here, obviously. But it's, as always, it's out of our hands, and we've definitely made our peace with that. So Jeff and Deb shipped some chickens, ducks, and maybe goats if we have space in the future. So you have chickens and goats already, and you'd go back to a few chickens, Jenny. You don't have any pets at all at the moment, any hens or anything at all at the moment. Okay, yeah. So I think for us, I mean, the thought of not having chickens, I can't imagine us never having hens. I understand. So we've got a neighbour up the road actually who has come and bought a couple of our Brahmas off us because she had a fox attack that she only had 2 hens. And my son Torrance just coming in. It's okay, son, you can come in. Still the kitchen. Hello. So they lost their hens. They only had a couple, so they came to get us, or came to get a couple more from us to replace them. So I kind of get it, if you've lost your animals through fox strike or something like that, I kind of get why you might go without them. Jeff and Deb writes, we have chickens at the moment, but we don't have enough space for anything else yet. Understood. Yeah, ducks are awesome as well. We've got 2 ducks at the moment, and we haven't really got a program for our ducks. We haven't got a plan. And I think that's something that we really should start thinking about. But as always, there's so much going on that things just filter through and don't necessarily make it to the top of the to-do list. You all right, son?
Yeah.
So yeah, and I think I'm personally, talking about the to-do list and everything else, I'm feeling so much better now than I was a couple of days ago. I was really feeling quite swamped a few days ago, but this weekend, having a full weekend off work and a full weekend where I'm not committed to anything, really made a difference. And I feel like we're making some headway again. And I've taken a bit of time out for myself as well to kind of sit and do nothing. Not a lot, but a little bit. And that brings me on to one thing I wanted to share with you guys. If you don't read all the comments in my videos, you might have missed this. Hi, Hannah. How are you? I hope you're well. Glad you could join us. So one of the comments I think it's my favorite comment I've ever had, and it was from Jeff and Deb Shipton, and they left a message, and it was after, the last couple of videos. I hope they haven't come across as sort of Debbie Downers, but I have felt a little bit, like I was struggling to keep up, and I'm sure that came across. And they wrote, "What we can do in the time we are given and the abilities we have is always enough." And I just love that. I love that thought process, and that, it's about being kind to yourself, isn't it? And Torrin, darling, you're shaking the camera. That's all right. My son's desperately trying to get himself a nice lolly and trying to open it on the table. So Jenny says our chicken space is now a new shed for bikes because that's our kids' hobbies. Full house of adult boys' bicycles. Wow. They certainly do take up some space, don't they? Elliot Hughes writes, would love to have chickens to start with, but I am renting, so just trying to convince the landlords. Okay. So good luck with that, Elliot. Hopefully you get your hens. Like I say, for us, I couldn't imagine not having hens. They're a gateway animal for sure, as lots of people have mentioned. They're a gateway animal and they're a great starter animal. They're a great animal to introduce you to the idea of animal husbandry and the first steps towards keeping animals if you've not, because it's different from having a pet that you have in the house, because you're not always seeing them. Quite a lot of the time they're getting on with life on their own. So it's a whole new aspect of animal husbandry, and kind of that, looking after an outside animal again is different, because it takes into account all kinds of, housing requirements and bedding requirements and things like that. And generally speaking, they introduce things like the management of manure into what you're doing on a daily basis, that kind of, these are all new things to people who have only kept dogs or cats or hamsters and things like that. They're all new things that then open up a world of, well, if I can keep a chicken and, I'm used to managing the housing requirements through the season, I'm used to managing the manure and using it and actually finding it useful, and I'm used to, feeding and watering regularly an animal that's outside of my house, then I can go from there and maybe consider a goat or a pig or a sheep or a turkey or a duck. And it's, like I say, it's a massive gateway animal, and they're so they're something that you don't really have to go out on a limb with as well, because they're really, really easy and simple to look after, aren't they? Shannon writes, I have 7 chickens and they are great. They certainly are. Jeff and Deb Shipton writes, love our chickens. And Jackie, my wife, writes, chickens are my therapy animals. Hannah Starrett, love our 11 chickens, but my real loves are our ducks. I think ducks have just got this really amusing character to them, haven't they? They are like the comedians of the poultry world. Are they even poultry? I'm assuming they are. But yeah, so ducks, I think. Ducks are great, and they're also fantastic meat animals if that's your bent, what you're thinking of. I know for us, that's the purpose of having our ducks, even if we haven't quite got as far as getting our breeding program together and doing all that kind of thing. So yeah, there's that. So another thing that kind of leads into, talking about getting chickens and other animals, one of the things that it sort of became apparent to me is through doing what we're doing, and not just through the chickens, but so we obviously have a lot of animals. We have a lot of different things here, and we are striving towards self-sufficiency. It's a road we're on, and it's a journey that we're enjoying. But it's something that really juxtaposes against the culture at large. And I noticed this in my work, but also my wife's work and our sort of friendship circles. There's no one who kind of gets it insofar as the whole hog. Now there are people who we talk to, and I'll say, oh, I've made goat's cheese, and we'll give them some goat's cheese, and they'll be like, that's brilliant, and they'll be impressed and stuff like that. But there's no one that kind of gets the whole thing. They all think we're a little bit mad, I think. And there's no one I know who, when I tell them, oh, we've got pork here that we raised ourselves, they're all like, oh, that's great. But when I tell them that I've slaughtered and butchered it myself, they just think I'm a little bit nuts. And I kind of get that, I do kind of get that, because I'm taking everything to the extreme. But it did make me kind of realize that there's no one, that there's so much happening lately that has kind of all come together in this big melting pot of an idea. And it's kind of made me realize that we don't necessarily have some of the easiest ways of doing things here, because we're so isolated socially in what we're doing. And what I mean by that is, we don't have any friends who do anything similar to us. We don't have any friends who raise their own animals. We don't have any friends who grow their own food, really, to any degree. And listening to the Urban Homesteading UK podcast with Alan and Mike this week, and every episode, they're always talking about how, well, that's all right. If yours fail, I've got some spare seedlings. You can have some of mine. And it got me thinking about the whole sort of division of labor thing, and how basically, that's how, as a society, we've become rich. We've become wealthy. We're able to do all these things. I'm able to talk to you now on an electronic device, is the labor, by separating out these tasks and have one person who is extremely skilled in, and their only job is a very, very tiny section of our society, and everybody has their own specialisms. Whereas what I'm doing flies in the face of that, and I'm sort of the extreme generalist. I'm trying to do almost everything myself, and I love it. I wouldn't trade it for the world, but it does bring up this, this idea that that's where I'm going to face the roadblocks, is going to be in basically the amount of time that I'm able to dedicate to do all these things. Strawberry milkshake. And so it kind of got me to thinking that life could be easier if we had, or if I had, a few friends that were doing similar things, and we could sort of do some trading. And not so much because it's bartering, but more think of it as a communal sort of project that we're all working on together, so that I could sow, because it takes me no more time really to sow 100 seedlings as it does to sow 10. And that's kind of the thing that Alan and Mike have going on sometimes, where they can compensate for each other's losses, and we don't really have that. And I think that is to our detriment. And all the sort of self-sufficiency stories that you hear about, the successful ones, they generally involve some kind of communal behavior, a communal garden or a communal little town or whatever it might be. So it made me think, who do you guys have in your networks that kind of support you? Obviously, I'm incredibly lucky personally that I have my wife and children who support what we're doing here massively. But, are any of you part of a slightly wider network that includes friends or family that are also doing the same thing? And if so, how does that affect what you're able to do and your productivity, etc.? So let me get to a few messages here. Jenny Nichols writes, I admire anyone who raises and butchers their own animals, but I couldn't do it myself. Hannah also writes, we have them both for both purposes. So we're talking about the ducks, I think, for meat and for eggs. Shannon Ward writes, aren't we all at least a little nuts? Well, I hope so, Shannon, so that I don't feel completely alone. Hannah Starrett writes, completely empathise with that, Carl. We feel the same. Channels like this make us feel more normal. Well, there's no... In my world and in my future, there's no craving to strive for normality. Certainly not. So, but it's great that you feel that, this kind of can offer some addition to your sort of frame of reference within which you sort of see the world, because that's my goal here, is just to normalize this kind of thing and to try and make it so that it's all accessible and we all have a chance to do all the things we love. And for me, that's another thing that I mentioned to my wife this week. You have to love it. I say this all the time, you have to love it. If you're doing this for commercial reasons, then I suppose there are better things to do if your gain is the gain that you're seeking is an economic one. Now, of course, there are things that we do that are extremely economically efficient, and raising our own meat is one of them. It would cost hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pounds to pay for the same quality pork that I've just put in the freezer. But a lot of it, a lot of what we do here, it would be economically more sensible for me to work at any job pretty much for the same amount of time as I spent sowing seeds, and then take that money and buy seedlings. That would be a more economic use of my time if we're looking at it purely financially. And the same with a lot of the stuff we do in the kitchen. So yesterday I had a nightmare with my sourdough. I had an absolute nightmare. So obviously, for baking sourdough on a Saturday, it starts Friday night. You get the sourdough out the fridge, bring it up to room temperature, you feed it, then you go to bed, you wake up fairly early, you mix your sourdough, you knead it for a good 10 minutes, you leave it to rise, you come back to it at lunchtime, knead it again, form your loaves, leave it again, you come back to it later in the afternoon, put it in the oven, and after all that work, I burnt it. I left it in the oven 20 minutes longer than I should have and burnt it. And when you have something like that happen, where you've dedicated all this time and energy and effort into something, and then it just vanishes, ruins, and is worthless, it makes you not question why you do it, because that's never a doubt for me. But it does sort of draw into focus the cost of what you're doing, because that cost me those moments of that day. And what's the price of a couple of loaves of sourdough? £3 or £4 maybe. And but it doesn't change my desire to do it. It just makes me reaffirm through a conversation I had with Jackie that you have to do it as a hobby. This has to be your hobby. There are people who really, really enjoy and I've used these examples before, they really, really enjoy karate, and their hobby is karate, and they spend their money on going to karate lessons, buying gis, and all these kinds of things. There are people whose hobby is fishing, course fishing, and they spend their money on, tickets to go fishing places and all the fishing equipment, etc., etc., etc. And this is our hobby. So, I choose to spend my resources doing this thing because I love it. I love learning all these new things. I love making cheese. I love making bread. I do all of those things. So you have to look at it as a hobby, as your hobby. And if it's your hobby, then you don't mind, spending a little bit of money on it. Now, my wife and I both don't drink. We don't go out to the pub. So, if we enjoyed going out to the pub and socialising that way, hello, pesky chicken, glad you could join us. Then, we'd be or going to the cinema, all these kinds of things. Then we'd be spending that portion of our income on that form of entertainment and enjoyment. Well, we're choosing to spend it on this instead, and that's okay. And I was about to say we've made our peace with it, but it's not even about making our peace. It's about, this is what we want to do. We're driven to do this. So even when I say to you guys, which I do sometimes I can get a little bit don't know what the word is, but less enthusiastic, and I say, things like I'm really struggling to keep up. Even in those moments, I'm still doing what I love, and I'm still driven to do it. Got a few comments here. So Shannon Ward says, my partner's dad is self-sufficient in all veg and some meat. He helps me answer any questions and offers advice. As for further help, we are 2 hours drive apart, so are limited by that. Jeff and Deb Shipton writes, our adult daughters support us practically and emotionally with lots of aspects, but otherwise we fly solo in our self-sufficient goals, and our friends do think we are a little bit crazy. So for those of you who have just joined us, I was asking, what sort of support do you get from others around your self-sufficiency? You know, are you in a, you know, extended network where you're kind of sharing seedlings or trading things or just general support like that? I know so we're quite insular here in our family, but when I had my injury, my brother-in-law Jason did come and help. You know, well, I've got people that would readily come and help me if I needed the help, but none of them are in this world, and none of them are kind of, you know, the sort of people who would have spare leek seedlings if mine failed, for example. So Jeff and Deb go on. No, I've already read that one, sorry. So Shannon goes on to say, it does suck when you put in so much effort for an undesirable output, talking about my failed sourdough yesterday. Jenny Nichols writes, social media helps. We have a village and allotment hub for any requests with sharing advice, seed and plant swaps, all useful. That sounds amazing. And who formed that, Jenny? How long's that been going? Is that something, from memory, are you in Ireland? Please remind me, because I think that kind of thinking and that kind of system is far more prevalent in Ireland than it is here in the UK. At least that's what's going on in my head. Guido Fawkes writes, good afternoon, Carl. You're resident vegan here. Love watching your videos. Must admit that I prefer the veg growing part, but appreciate all that you do. Thank you ever so much, Guido Fawkes. And I know you know, but I'll just say it again. You know, I'm completely respectful of people who are vegans, and you know, I certainly try my best to strike a balance between sharing everything we're doing here, you know, including the meat raising, but also being respectful of other people's choices and desires. And you know, I'm not going to, you know, never going to really put it in people's faces, a lot of that stuff, because I know it's not for everyone. And I think ethically speaking, here's my take on it. And I released a couple of podcasts all about this, but here's my take on it. Ethically speaking, I think that if you've made the decision to be a vegan for ethical reasons, would you mind just... Sorry, I've got a little conversation happening just over here. I've just asked if they could do it at the other side of the room. So ethically speaking, if you've made the decision to be a vegan for ethical reasons, I think that's really firm ethical ground that you're standing on. And I've got no bones with that argument at all. My opinion is, aligned with yours insofar as animal husbandry and what have you. And I think a lot of the factory farming practices that go on in the first world are abhorrent. I believe that it's also ethical if you can, raise an animal and give it a fantastic life and then do all of the subsequent processes with the utmost respect for the animal. Then for me personally, that's also an ethical choice. It doesn't mean that the vegan option is any less ethical. That's not what I'm saying at all. I think the two can equally be ethical, and that's where I stand. That's where I happen to have come down on the issue. So that's how I feel about it. So another thing to say is that if you were thinking of, raising some of your own protein meat, then I do have a podcast episode on Wednesday coming out, which is an interview with someone who I'm not sure she wants to be named here, so I won't. But she's raising her own ducks and rabbits for meat on a micro holding, a really, really small scale space. So that's what Wednesday's podcast is about. Jenny replies, it's Tatsfield, Surrey. Very strong village community here, even though we are close to nearby towns. Allotments have been going for 10 years now, and there's been a village website forever. That sounds brilliant. I'd love it if there was something like that around here. And I suppose you can always say, well, why don't you start it yourself? And, you'd be absolutely right to think that. And it is the sort of thing that I would do. But again, it's just time for me. And, there's too many other things I've got going on right now. If I find myself in the future with a little bit of time, that sort of thing is the sort of thing I would love to do. I'd love to set up a much bigger community locally here for me and others to use. And, the more of that, the better, I think. And one of my ins there, one of the ways I would do that is through the Wincanton Fruit and Veg Shop, which is where I get a lot of our pig food. And the reason being is I'm already involved in some sort of community gardening stuff there and, teaching courses from their space. So that's definitely something that would get me in, and it actually brings up something really exciting, which I want to share with you. I haven't mentioned it yet, but I'm so excited. Just gonna have a drink. So, okay, so we've got a problem, and I've turned that problem into a massive solution. So, as you'll know, we can't keep pigs here any longer, and as you'll know, we collect several bins, big dustbins full of discard or unsaleable fruit and vegetables every single week. So that's to feed our pigs. Now, that creates a problem because not only can we not have the pigs anymore, and we lose our ability to use this sort of free feed, this free resource, also it creates a problem for the fruit and vegetable shop, who's come to rely on us as their, waste disposal system. Well, this fruit and vegetable shop, the main one, so I collect from a few, but the main one is the Wincanton one, and that's where I get most of it from. And they've got a communal garden that I'm heavily involved in, and we've come up with a plan. So basically, they're going to provide the materials. They're going to pay for the materials, so I've got no material outlay, but I'm going to provide the labour, and I'm going to build and install and set up some vermicomposting bins, some worm composting bins at their communal garden, which is just opposite their shop. And that then is going to deal with all of their waste. Now, few things to say about that. So we've taken a problem of this waste that no longer has a home. We've dealt with that problem. And then we've also created an output of all this compost, which the Wincanton Fruit and Vegetable Shop are going to sell half of, and I'm going to have half of. So basically, I'm going to have this composting system just constantly churning over that I can just go and collect compost from whenever I like. And it's solved a problem. I've created this system not by, having to find someone to donate anything, or, it's actually solving a problem for someone else. And I can't tell you how excited I am about that. So, super, super happy. The only thing, or an extra thing to think about is vermicomposting isn't something I've ever done before, so I'm going to be doing quite a bit of research and making sure that I get it right. But I'm so excited. Can you get more permaculture than that? You take this resource, this waste resource, you turn it into something that's going to be used. You're solving a problem. It's so happy. Thank you, Jeff and Deb. Shannon Ward writes, have you ever considered soldier fly farming, mate? No, I'm not sure. When you say soldier flies, not sure what you mean necessarily. I've considered, so fly farming, my understanding of it, and this might not be at all what you're thinking of, if it was about, basically creating maggots for the chickens, yes, I have thought about it. And it's done really, really simply. So, I've never done it, but my understanding is you'd hang a bucket with a few holes in the bottom above your chickens, and you put some meat in it, some discarded meat in it, and the flies come along, lay their eggs, and then when the eggs hatch and the larvae turn into maggots, they find their way out of the meat through the holes, and they are feed for your chickens. And I have considered it, but I've never gone any further. Sam Tancock writes, I love a tidy circle of resources, as do I. And she also writes mealworms. I'm assuming that's a similar kind of thing to what I was just talking about there, breeding mealworms. Soldier fly farming is a bit simpler, I think. It's not something I've got a tremendous amount of knowledge on, Shannon, so it's difficult for me to comment, really. I think, I'm trying to think why I've never done it. There's a tiny portion of it, it doesn't affect me, is kind of the ick factor for my wife. She doesn't like the idea. It's just started raining here. Just started raining, which I don't mind at all. It's just drizzling. We've got so much going on outside, and we've had a fair bit of rain, but not any for a couple of days. So yeah, I'm quite happy with that. Oh, we've also got our first cucumbers forming. They're only about that long. So excited. I've been out in the garden all morning. There's so much going on. Sue Cooper writes, hey Carl, just started following you too. I'm a vegan, so I'm here for the veg and fruit growing and hoping to get an allotment soon. Fantastic. So glad to have you, Sue. Hopefully you're enjoying, everything we're doing here. And if you're interested and you're not aware yet, there's a podcast as well, Self-Sufficient Hub podcast, wherever you get your podcasts, obviously. So yeah, there's the going back to the maggot farming, or is maggot farming and mealworm farming same thing? It's not something I know a tremendous amount about, but yeah. So first of all, it's like the ick factor, and then secondly, I don't think we have, it's not like we have a lot of waste products that doesn't already have a home. So yes, we could turn that waste product into maggots, but we can also turn it into other things. So, we're pretty good with that. Hi, Emma McPherson. So glad you could join us. And that reminds me, actually, I just want to run through my list from last week. Everybody that asked for the Egyptian walking onions, let you all know where I'm at with it. So Emma McPherson, Jenny Nichols, Rachel Hellier, and Kimro 1970. You should all either have yours or they're in the post. No, not Jenny Nichols, sorry. Emma McPherson, Rachel Hellier, Kimro 1970, and one other chap in America should all be in the post. Susie Grange, I've got your email address. And then Jenny Nichols, I believe you're collecting yours, I think. And then Hannah Starrett, do I have your home address yet? I'm not sure I have your address yet, Hannah. So if you could send me an email, that'd be great. And I apologise if I've got any of that mixed up. I'm trying to keep track of everything as best I can. Emma McPherson writes, hers are already planted. Fantastic. One thing to be aware of with those Egyptian walking onions, they will take a little while to get established now. So, just be patient with them. Hannah, you're collecting them. I do apologise. So maybe it's Jenny that I was getting Hannah and Jenny confused. So Hannah's collecting hers because Hannah is coming on a foraging walk here on the 12th, which I'm really excited about, in a small group. And so it's just Jenny Nichols, who I'm not sure I've got your address. Could you send me an email, please? The email address is in the description. Oh, okay. So I've got it. Right. Well, I'm going to do one last thing then, Jenny, is I'm just going to say this. I'm going to post them all this week. If anyone doesn't have them by not this Monday coming, but next Monday, get in touch, let me know, and I'll take it from there. And I'll assume that I've got everyone's covered now. So sorry, it's difficult for me to keep track of everything because everything's sort of split up. Some people contacted me through Patreon, some people contacted me through the email address, and I tried to keep a list of everything I'd done. But anyway, there you go. I think that's everyone covered. So yeah, going back to all the the different animals, what chicken breeds have you got? I think most of you have got chickens, haven't you? So what chicken breeds have you got, and are they just egg breeds or are they a combination? I think chicken breeds are. They're as variable as dog breeds because you've got not only the different sizes, but you've got the different temperaments and the different uses. And, some are really good egg layers. Some are really good only for meat, really. Some are goodish at both. And then you've got those options in, full size and bantam size. And then some make really great pets. So Emma's got the brown ones, ISA Browns, I'm assuming. That's the same as me. ISA Browns and Leghorns for Shannon. Those are two fantastic egg-laying breeds. I'm actually going to get some Leghorns next for our laying hens. The brown ones was Emma. Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. I'm trying to keep up. But yeah, so we go with the ISA Browns, and we have done up until now for our laying hens. But next batch or two, for a couple of years, we're actually going to go with the Leghorns because they're a white bird and they lay about the same amount. And the reason we're doing that is because we've just added to our flocks, and it's really difficult to keep track of who are the younger hens, who are the older hens. So what we're going to do for a couple of years is we're going to introduce Leghorns, because we lose some every year to old age and what have you, and, pests and diseases. So every year we probably get 15 to 20 new birds, and we're going to start getting the Leghorns in so that we can, see that they're definitely going to be the younger birds. And then in 2 or 3 years, we'll know exactly who's who. Shannon Ward says, my partner is not comfortable with meat chickens yet. No, and that's a process in itself. It's a process I'm always on. I'm still on. And, a lot of my family aren't comfortable with lots of different things. I'd love to be raising meat rabbits, but we're definitely not there yet insofar as my family's acceptance of that. Hannah Starrett, White Star, Morans, Lace Wyandotte, Aracunas, and Leghorn here. That's a beautiful flock. Oh goodness, I love Wyandottes. That's a beautiful flock. Lots of really pretty birds there. Sam Tancock writes, we have commercial layers, some Rhode Island rocks, and Speckledy. My son now wants to start breeding and selling chickens. What a fantastic little hobby for your son to get into. My daughter wanted to do that once, but she never really followed through with it. But I just think breeding and selling chickens is a fantastic little hobby. We're doing it as well. We kind of do it by accident. You know, we've probably got 30 or so immature Brahmas at the moment who range from just a few days old to, I think the oldest are probably 7 or 8 weeks old, maybe even more than that. We've sold some of the bigger ones. And, you know, that cycling is it's another great part of animal husbandry that you can learn through having chickens. Jeff and Deb Shipton, right, ours are mixed breed, ISA Browns and Light Sussex, 2 more fantastic layers. Emma McPherson writes, which breeds are recommended for meat? So, if you did want to raise meat chickens, there's one thing I do have opinions on is, but basically, and this is just my opinion, and everyone else can do, you know, as they please. Obviously, no judgment here, but I think generally speaking, most people on channels like this, if they're talking about meat birds, they're going to suggest that you go for a Cornish cob or some kind of broiler chicken. And I'm not entirely sure the definition of that word, what it means, but to my mind, what the word broiler means really, and what it sums up in my mind when I hear about broiler hens, what we're talking about is a bird that has been bred and, in my opinion, overbred to produce lots of meat really quickly, minimum inputs, maximum outputs. And that all sounds great if your concerns are your bottom line, if you're a commercial farmer, and those are your only concerns. For me, those aren't my only concerns. And I think with broilers, what you do is you're actually having, and again, I'm not trying to preach, this is just my feeling, but if you buy broilers, what you're doing is you're supporting an industry that creates unhappy, unhealthy animals because they get so big, they literally can't walk. They're prone to a ridiculous number of health issues. They have a ridiculously short, unhealthy life, and that's not the sort of animals I want here. So again, no judgment. I'm not trying to preach, but that's why we don't go for broilers. But broilers is, you know, what most people will say when they talk about a meat bird. Other than that, you know, any large bird really, a lot of the Indian game birds are really nice meat birds. We like our Brahmas as meat birds. They're a dual purpose bird. But, you know, there's a lot of choice. But for me personally, I don't want, and, you know, and this goes for all of our animals, I don't want an animal here that's unhappy purely for my benefit. So, you know, that's how we look at it. So we don't raise Cornish cobs here, and, you know, we're not looking to. Jackie says, we've got Brahmas, Pekins, and a Silky. Yeah, well, that's us. And Sam Tancock writes, ditto to Emma's question. The thought of Ross cobs going off their legs is not for me. Yeah, Sam, that's basically exactly the same as I just said. Sue Cooper writes, where do I find out about the foraging day? So, okay, if you want to come foraging with me, and I do foraging courses in Dorset and Somerset, I also do the occasional course down in Devon. Best thing to do is send me an email saying that you're interested, and then I can reply back to you with a list of dates and availability, because they change all the time, so it's really difficult for me to sort of publicize them anywhere. But yeah, just send me an email, get in touch. I'd love to have some of you guys come along. What about Indian game hens for meat? Yep, mention those. They're not something we've ever had, so I haven't got a lot of experience with them. And Emma McPherson writes, so I agree with you, I want happy chickens. And dual purpose sounds good. Yeah, so Brahmas, so they've really gone up in my estimation in the last 12 months. Before then, we kind of, you know, they were just, I tend to take custodianship insofar as planning for the birds that are kind of, you know, our egg layers. And my wife definitely 100% takes custodianship in terms of planning of what we would call our decorative breeds. And these are breeds that people often have for pets, you know, our Pekins, our Silky, our Brahmas. They were very much my wife's pets and still are. And until fairly recently, my kind of understanding is that they weren't laying that many eggs, so they didn't really do anything. And that's all fine, you know, as pets. So, you know, I just didn't really get that involved. But it's only recently I've come to realize that they actually lay pretty prolifically. And, you know, for whatever reason, just that knowledge had just skirted under my radar. And, you know, because they were pets and my wife only had a few, it was only the odd cock that I was able to kind of harvest for meat. Whereas recently, you know, the flock has grown. I've noticed the number of eggs they're laying, and it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous for a decorative breed, and that they're also that many now that we're starting to see more and more of them cycling through our sort of food system insofar as meat, that I've completely 180'd on them, and I've gone from saying they're a useless decorative bird that make nice pets to they're a fantastic dual purpose animal. So yeah, they really do, you know, lay a load of eggs and make great meat. So yeah, there you go. Happy chickens. So this is great, and this would make a good fridge magnet as well. Happy chickens plus happy wife equals happy life. Yeah, well, I would suggest I'd go one further. Happy chickens equals happy wife equals happy life. Sue Cooper writes, thanks, Carl. I'm in Fareham, Hampshire, so not a million miles away. I'll drop you an email. Yeah, thanks, Sue. Please do that. It'd be great to have you come along on one of our walks. So yeah, I think I've got through. There's a few little things I wanted to mention today, and there's one last one. So I think it was 2 weeks ago in the live stream, I believe Julie Ellaby asked at the end of September, because as you know, we've got my September challenge coming up, which we're all going to be sharing, and I'm really looking forward to it, where I'm only going to be eating things that I can make myself, you know, nothing I buy in a shop. And one of the things that I was asked by Julie Ellaby in that live stream was, am I planning a big sort of celebration feast for October the 1st when it's over? And my reply then, it hasn't changed, is no, I'm not, because what I'm hoping to achieve, I'm hoping that this isn't going to be like a punishment. I'm hoping that I can make it a celebration throughout the whole of September of what you can produce yourself. And, you know, as part of that, you know, what I'm actually having for dinner tonight would fit that category really well, and I just wanted to share it with you. So I've got some pork belly that I cooked really, really slowly. I sort of part cooked it yesterday and then sliced it into slices. Then I've marinated each individual slice with honey, garlic, and tarragon. That's marinating in the fridge right now. Then I've got some pork ribs that I've marinated in a sweet and sour sauce, and then I've got some other. Now, I'm not a butcher, so what I think they are, I think it's like the pork chop, but also the rib attached, like a whole rib with like a pork chop on the end with some of the loin. I've got a rack of those, and I've marinated them, or I've got them marinating now in a barbecue sauce. So I'm doing all three of them for tea tonight with some potatoes out the garden, a salad, and some veg. And it's just going to be a celebration of, you know, what we're able to produce, and, you know, the first meal from that pig that I harvested. So your paprika pork shoulder is going to be fantastic. But what I will do for sure is I'll take some pictures of that and I'll put it on the Facebook group if you're interested. And if anyone's watching and you're not in our Facebook group already, then come and join it. Come and check us out. It's a fantastic little community, and it's really welcoming. And, you know, there's loads of people in there asking questions, etc., etc. And yeah, it's just awesome. So yeah, and that's going to bring us pretty much to the end. I will just quickly give you all a reminder. Please press that like button in the live stream. It makes a difference. It helps to grow the channel. You know, do all of those good things that you always do to support me, and they're always really, really appreciated. That's brilliant. So Emma's having pork shoulder from a pig half that she bought yesterday. So is that from someone local that's raising their own? That sounds amazing. Hashtag pig love. Yeah. Well, I tell you what I'll do is, you know, I'm coming to the end of this video. We're going to be wrapping it up ever so soon. So before we go, I might just share with you the belly that I've got marinating. No, night, Jeff and Deb, and speak to you all soon. So I will just show you that one thing before I go. So if you're one of the vegans among us, feel free to tune out now. But I just think I'm really excited about this. So that's the pork belly that's sort of part cooked, and that's with tarragon, honey and mustard, marinating since yesterday. And then we'll bang them in a frying pan and just cook them nice and hard and hot. That's going to wrap this one up. Thanks for watching, everyone, and I will speak to you all really, really soon. Cheers.